Rebuilding the economy and the state of democracy in most African states. These are some of the issues that are now in the spotlight. Leaders are elected following promises to rebuild the economy and restore democracy. But how far are leaders going in achieving these promises? Well, let's cast our net now and cast our eye to the neighboring country in the Southern African region of Zambia. Political analyst Sishuwa Sishuwa joins me now to reflect on a year of Hakainde Hichilema's tenure as president of Zambia. Good afternoon, Dr. Sishuwa, and I've got to thank you for your time and your patience while we were going through that update coming through from the West Rand. I saw your piece on the Mail and Guardian, just reflecting on 1 year of Hakainde Hichilema in office. And I like the balance that you try to strike. What are the main highlights for you? Let's start with the economy. I woke up this morning to the publication Quartz telling me that the Zambian kwacha is the best performing currency against the US dollar. And I immediately thought about our conversation today to say, well, you know, you'll have little to criticize President Hichilema on around the issue of the economy. But of course, the currency performance is but one measure. There are other measures as well.
That's correct. I think you have to give him credit in relation to how he has stabilized the economic fundamentals. You know, he has reduced the inflation from about 20% last year before his election to about 9% this time. The kwacha, as you correctly noted, has stabilized. And he has also brought on board the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, to stabilize the economy, to restructure Zambia's debt. He has created a much more favorable political, rather economic environment in the mining sector, where there was a bit of policy uncertainty under the previous administration. We have also seen about 40,000, new jobs created in the public sector. He has increased, the administration has increased the constituency development fund from about 1.4 million to about 25 million kwacha. So over the past 12 months, in terms of the economy, Hichilema's administration has taken important steps towards resolving Zambia's debt crisis and rebuilding the economy. I think it is in the area of democracy where he hasn't done very well.
In fact, before we get
over the last 12 months in particular.
I want us to get to the issue around democratic reforms, but I wanted us to talk a bit more around the economy. One of the most pressing issues when he came in was around Zambia's debt crisis. There's a point where the country actually defaulted on its international debt. And I see now that there's this IMF loan, and I think it's $1.3 billion that has now been approved. How has he fared in dealing with debt in particular?
I think his capacity to rebuild Zambia's economy was going to be adversely affected, I think, by the staggering debt that Zambia has. The previous administration under the president of Edgar Lungu accumulated an unsustainable debt. And what Hichilema has done over the last 12 months is to appeal to negotiate with Zambia's creditors, who, however, were very skeptical about getting to the table without some kind of an insurance. So the IMF deal provides that kind of insurance. And the IMF has now come on board. Zambia's creditors are now willing to renegotiate the repayment terms of the country's debt from a shorter time frame, a much longer time frame, which gives the government a bit of leeway in terms of its capacity to tackle Zambia's key challenges. It remains, of course, to be seen in relation to how this IMF deal may affect the common man, the ordinary citizen, largely because the government has been very evasive in relation to publishing details or the contents of the agreement with the IMF, even though the Minister of Finance in recent days has come out to say they will make the details of that bailout public very soon.
Yeah, but that point that you were trying to get to, Dr. Sishuwa, before I interrupted you, around democratic reforms, that was a key promise, was it not? And I must tell you, just from outside, the reports that suggest that more people have been arrested for, quote-unquote, insulting the president in just 1 year of President Hichilema's tenure than 6 years of Edgar Lungu's tenure. That left me really disheartened and hugely disappointed.
I think the Hichilema administration has been very slow in relation to institutional democratic reform. You know, Hichilema himself was a victim of many repressive statutes when he was in opposition. Key among these was a law that criminalizes any criticism of the president, called the defamation of the president law. And Hichilema, when he was in opposition, promised to repeal this repressive statute immediately he's elected. In power, you know, he hasn't done that. Instead, what we have seen is the same law being used to arrest, you know, ordinary citizens, opposition leaders, for criticizing him effectively under the tag that, you know, they're insulting the president. As I speak to you now, an opposition leader, you know, Sean Tembo, has been in detention for the past 3 or so days over the same law. He's accused of having insulted the president, when in effect he was simply criticizing the instability, the instability of the government policies in the energy sector. And so that has really been a blight on Hichilema's record, because he was widely expected to immediately repeal some of these repressive statutes, and yet he now sees no problem with that, going by the slow pace at which his administration is enacting institutional reform.
Yeah, and I do share your, your intrigue, to say the least, and perhaps your annoyance with the idea that around the Public Order Act, the government would only now be issuing out a statement in the public to say, tell us what's wrong with this law, when it actually was a promise of the party of the president before the elections that they would repeal it. I've got to thank you for your time. I'm completely out of time. Would have loved to have this conversation for a bit longer, but I am out of time. That's Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa there, joining us to reflect on the first year in office of Hakainde Hichilema as president of Zambia. Do the right thing, Mr. President. You did promise all these reforms. They've got to start coming through.